Our first guest tonight says before we hurry to overhaul our immigration laws, we must methodically look at each of the components that need to be fixed. And to that end, the House Judiciary Committee will unveil 2 measures this week aimed at creating a new temporary agricultural guest worker program and a measure that requires all employers to use E-Verify. Joining us now is House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Congressman Bob Goodlatte of Virginia. Mr. Chairman, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you too, Lou.
Let me start with where you expect to go here. The guest worker program, E-Verify. What happened to the Gang of 8 in the Senate and the Gang of 8 in the House, and their big, what appear to be omnibus bills, overwhelming bills, 844 pages worth?
Well, those are important efforts in the Senate and in the House, but we have said from the outset that this is an extraordinarily complex piece of legislation if you were to take it all in one bite, and that we don't want to have a bill like Obamacare, where, as the then Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, you have to pass it to find out what's in it. There's a lot of unintended consequences that will occur when you put so many moving parts together. So we're breaking it down into pieces. We're going to start with E-Verify, something very important for employers to use to assure themselves that they do not hire people who are not lawfully present, and a guest worker program, because the current one is badly broken. And if you did have a legalization program, which was done in 1986, about a third of the workforce in agriculture left agriculture when they could work anywhere else. And so we've got to have something better than they had then in order to do that. We also will have something dealing with high-skilled workers. We'll deal with interior enforcement in the country. The Homeland Security Committee will produce something related to border security. And we'll start putting all of these pieces out there and then holding hearings on the legislative language to hear the strengths and weaknesses of them. That's how you should build this from the grassroots up. We'll hear from our constituents, and our members, both on the Judiciary Committee and in the full House, will have input in this process, and we'll move it up that way and do something that we think can address the fact that while we're a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws, and we've got to have something that works to recognize both.
Well, let me just say, if I may, Mr. Chairman, you're talking so much good sense and judgment in the way to proceed here. I've got to compliment you on it, congratulate you on it. Do you have the support of your caucus and your leadership on this?
Well, we are building support by the day. We certainly have support from our leadership in terms of recognizing that this is something that we are going to be proactive on and introduce the legislation on. We have to see what the Group of 8 in the House produce. We are not discouraging them. In fact, we're encouraging them to see what they can produce in a bipartisan fashion. We'll certainly take that and look at what can be utilized there along with what we're producing and try to produce a bipartisan bill that also has the overwhelming majority of the majority party in the House, and then if we're successful in passing something through the House, sit down and negotiate the differences with the Senate. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's how I think the only way it'll work and have the acceptance of the American people. It wasn't done that way in 2007, and the whole thing collapsed because it was imposed from the top down, and we got to make sure that does not happen this time.
It's also because both political parties were trying to game the American people just as hard as they could, rather than be forthright and open and invite public opinion and comment from, after all, the citizens of the country who do have some right and privilege to understand the public policy that's being created by you folks. I think that's terrific, and I hope that the leadership, if you will, stands up for precisely that process. Let me ask you one other question. A federal judge, as you know, has supported the Immigration and Customs Enforcement challenge to President Obama's deferred deportation policy, and is the judge in the case even intimating that ICE may be successful. What is your reaction to that preliminary indication and that case before the federal court?
It's very encouraging because the union in this case, which brought the suit on behalf of the 5,000 ICE employees who are charged with enforcing immigration laws in the country, have said that the administration is keeping us from doing our jobs. And if we're going to do immigration reform, the first thing we're going to have to do is to convince the American people that this will not be a repeat of 1986, where we gave legal status, in fact, a quick, easy pathway to citizenship for 3 million people, and then never honored the commitments on enforcement, including employer sanctions. So all of that will be a good measure of whether or not the administration and the Senate are willing to recognize something that I think has to be right up front in doing this, and that is there has to be both border enforcement and interior enforcement legislation, and that has to be put into effect as we do this. Not we're going to give legal status to 11 million people and then we'll take care of figuring out how to make all this work. That was tried once and a lot of people were fooled by it. We shouldn't be fooled again.
Congressman, we appreciate you being with us. Congressman Bob Goodlatte, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou.
Much more on